Today we're going to be talking to Nigel Hopkins. Hello, good morning, good afternoon, good evening, welcome back wherever you are. Today we're going to be talking to a chap called Nigel Hopkins. Now, if you are not familiar with Nigel, there's a fair chance that you've heard him play somewhere. Nigel has been touring extensively with Chris de Burgh over the last few years. He's worked with Bonnie Tyler alongside my guitar player, who will be a future guest on this channel. More recently with Alfie Boe and with Lulu, and also works on his own solo projects that he's trying to fit in and get time to do in between all of his other work commitments. During this conversation, we're going to be talking, of course, about Hammond organs. We're going to talk around the synths that he uses and some of the best synthesizers of the of the 70s and 80s, and moving on a bit further after that into the 90s, into the Korgs and the M1s and all those bits and bobs that we used to have. No doubt we all had. There's a prediction later on about what is going to be the new synth that is going to be worth $20,000 in 20 years' time. Because the prices have just gone crazy, haven't they, with the synths at the moment? And we muse over my Roland Jupiter 8 sale, which I probably haven't mentioned ever before, but and then we talk about how Nigel first met Jon Lord and the work that he did with Jon Lord and the extensive work, and how I first saw him really at the Royal Albert Hall when he did the celebration of Jon's life with Deep Purple and guests and the orchestra in the background. So really exciting chat with Nigel, and he's a great guy, and it was really, really great to catch up with him again after a while. So you'll find us mid-conversation talking about how he received the phone call from Jon Lord. I'll be back at the end with a bit more waffle.
So yeah, it was a bizarre one. So Chris de Burgh had a gig in Tel Aviv, and I've always wanted to go to Tel Aviv. And the strange thing about this period of time was the fact that it just preceded the Jon Lord celebration gig, which was weird because I had to tell Paul Mann and Jackie and Vicky, sort of basically John's widow and Ian Pace's wife, to say, guys, I'm not going to be back until probably Tuesday, and I know everybody's getting together on the Tuesday, but I'll join you all at John Henry's on the Wednesday for rehearsals. Mm-hmm. And there's a lot of material to get through, and obviously, as what started off as me playing for Steve Balsamo with one track. Paul Mann saying, "Oh, would you like to do like, possibly do like the Durham Concerto on the Hammond?" Just going, never heard it before. He's going, "Well, this is Durham Awakes." I said, "Okay, let's go for it." So then he sent the score through on the Hammond part, and he was like, "There's not a lot of Hammond stuff on this." And he said, "No," he said, this is the section where John doesn't really do a massive amount. But it's integral because obviously we have...
Oh, right.
Because John had obviously composed it and there's sections of it. It's just going, this is good. Okay.
Yeah.
Then I get a call to say, we're not sure who's going to play Pictured Within. So it was like, okay, would you like to do Pictured Within with Miller Anderson's? Yeah, okay. Well, look, while you're there, why didn't you do the Saraband suite as well? It's just like, okay, what starts off with one piece of music ends up becoming most of the first half. But prior to that, I was in Tel Aviv and I had the most spiritual time because with Dave Levy, the bass player, the rest of the band had gone home with Chris on the Sunday, and Dave and myself headed to Jerusalem. Obviously, it ties into the Lord, if you know what I mean. And Bethlehem, and we went up there, and it was incredible. Just like a journey. It came home on the Monday, sat here on the Tuesday, and just going, right, I'd better get my stuff together now, and kind of, I'd already gone through a lot of the stuff, but I better rehearse myself
Yeah.
through everything. So I was doing everything, and I knew that I was going to be leaving early in the morning. So I joined everybody at John Henry's. So the weird thing is, I got there by about, I don't know, 10:30, 11 o'clock, and Paul Wickens, Wixie, was emptying. Neil Murray was there. Jerry Brown. I met Murray Gold, who I now work with quite a fair bit with, like, you know, sort of like the Lula stuff and the Alfie Bow gig. Murray was there on guitar, and before I knew it, I was being whisked across town to go to the orchestral rehearsal, which was happening in St. Mary's Church in Marylebone. So it was like, that was really strange. Going across to rehearse the Durham Concerto, and then whizzed straight back to John Henry's. Thursday was rehearsal. Everybody in the church, with like Glenn Hughes was there, Bruce Dickinson, they were all there.
Yeah.
And, you know, going back to the whole, you know, the nerves and things like that. I don't know why, but I didn't feel nervous, and I should have. I should have been bricking it, absolutely bricking it.
I know.
And I normally bite my nails and bite my skin, and with a gig like that, I'm surprised that I had any digits left, to be honest with you, because it wouldn't be the case. It's just like, you know, I was with Chris de Burgh back in 2010. I think we were playing Batumi. There were like 35,000 people there with power issues, and I didn't
really?
I didn't feel nervous, but I played in a concert.
It's interesting, isn't it?
Yeah, I played in a concert in 2012 with Chris. Well,
I was just going to say, Jon Lord is clearly like an influence of yours, a huge influence on my life. I would have thought I would have felt more nervous, if anything.
Weird thing is that, as I say, I kind of, my friend Steve Balsamo, Steve said to me in 2009, John was looking for a keyboard player to augment his classical gigs, and I got the call, and Steve said, John's going to call you. So where are you? I said, I'm in Germany with Chris DeBurgh. We're on tour. We're doing the Footsteps tour. He said, well, I've given John your number, so you're going to get a call. It's like, right. Tony Kiley, my best mate, is in the band, plays drums with Chris DeBurgh. Tony and myself often talk about Deep Purple in rock, and talk about, you know, the Made in Japan and Burn albums. And I said, Tony, I said, I'm going to get a call off Jon Lord. He said, to do what? I said, to do this gig. And he's like, what? I'm not going to go into what he actually said, but what is, it was. And then we were waiting in the foyer area, and my phone rang. I just said, I don't recognise this number. I said, hello? He said, hello, Nigel. It's Jon Lord. And it was like, mute. I said, Tony, it's Jon Lord. Mate. He's going, get back on it. So I said, hi, John. Talk to her. He said, would you like to join me, do a gig in Lichfield Cathedral? He said, I'll send you all the parts, and you can have a look, and this is what we're going to be doing. And there was a whole bunch of things like Pictures Within, The Telemann Experiment, Sarabande Suite, Miles, I think it was it Miles Away? See, I can't remember the track, and there were quite a few other things. Child in Time came up, obviously, and it was So as a kid, that was kind of, for me, just I learned it, and I loved it.
That's incredible. I mean, I'm a big fan of Jon Lord, and I'm never going to meet him. That's a fact, isn't it? You know,
it's a rather stark reminder that life is very short. You know,
were you influenced by Deep Purple earlier on?
So, my uncle is a guitarist. Or he's a guitarist, I should say, and my uncle had a collection of stuff. So he had, you know, basically Made in Japan, in rock, Fireball, you know, so he had stuff, and he'd Burn. So I raided his record collection, and I would put these things on and just go, that's so aggressive. It's so wonderfully aggressive.
Yeah.
And at the same time I was into Emerson, Lake and Palmer. And when we were in school, you were torn between a few different things, which is somebody would turn around and go, "Oh, who's your favourite band?" Just going, "My favourite band is Emerson, Lake and Palmer." "Well, I'm into Deep Purple." Just going, "Okay, well, you go over there and I'll go over here."
Oh, really?
I always loved Jon's sound and his approach, and he was like the rhythm guitarist for Deep Purple, but he did it on his hand.
Absolutely.
And it was like
absolutely right.
And it was wonderful to listen to it. So years later, going forward to the gig, we ended up doing Child in Time. So with Cassia Alaska singing, Steve Balsamo, Don Richardson was on bass, Steve White was on drums. Intimidating human beings.
I was in the audience.
Mm-hmm. You were in the audience. I didn't then.
We've got a little bit.
We've got waved.
We've got a little bit. There's a little bit of lag on the thing, so apologies if I'm cutting over you. But yeah, as you were looking out to the stage, I was on the right middle up there, so I could see across the back of Jon's head, and I think you were on the piano to the left of Jon, weren't you, at one point?
Yeah, I mean the deal was that when I spoke to Jon on the phone, he said, "Look, we don't have a guitarist. So you're going to have to do all the guitar parts for Sarah Band." I said, "I've got my Moog."
Right.
So it's quite a funny story about that as well. I haven't got it with me. It's in storage in London. So I've got two Moog Voyagers, one which was signed by Bob, and the other one I took to this gig, and it's a Taffy Voyager, I call it, because I had the backlighting done in the colours of the Welsh flag. Probably
nice.
Well, debatable. So I turned up with this. I turned up with my Roland Phantom, and I'm a JD800, which I love to bits. And so we did the gig, and Child in Time kept, we played it, and Jon played the intro entirely different to the In Rock album, and it was like, ooh.
Yeah.
He did it in rehearsals, he did it in sound check, and he did it on the gig. All different intros. And afterwards in the hotel, I said to him, I said, oh, what an amazing experience to have, to play that tune with like one of my heroes. I said, but tell me, I said, what? I said, I was kind of slightly freaked out by the intro not being played like the original. And he said, well, if we'd taken the original take prior to that one, it would have been an entirely different intro as well. And if we'd gone with the one afterwards, it would have been a different one again. And he said,
amazing. So just completely off the top of his head, got the sound, got the percussion and the reverb, and just did it
on the spot. And there are lots of stories come up with that whole thing about the improvised section of the front end, when the front end of Speed King, when Jon obviously was waiting for all that stuff going on, and then it kind of, the band fade away with the the whammy bar of Richie, and he shared that chords coming in, and Jon said, and it is online, the story as well, where he said that he'd already worked out what he's going to play going into the but he got the notes in the wrong order on the left and right hand. So he said, and then that's what we kept it because it kind of worked. And it's like,
what because the left and the right hand are semitone out as they go down, aren't they?
I think, I'm not sure, like in the conversation, whether he was saying that should have been sort of a third apart or in unison. I don't know, but we'll never know because it's history and it's printed.
Amazing.
And that's it. And that's what
I love it.
I mean, I was discussing with Chris DeBurgh. I was discussing with Chris about Spaceman Came Travelling, which, I mean, the bizarre one for me is that every Christmas, kind of wherever you go, I went I joined the band in 2006. So I've been with Chris for 16 years.
Mm.
And I don't know sometimes how he puts up with me. But it's just such a pleasure to play some of these iconic tunes, you know, and everybody points to Lady in Red and just go, no, that's the guy. You know, you just got to look beyond that. If you take that out of the equation and look back at Chris's whole career, it's just incredible. The amount of songs, the amount of tunes, amazing stuff. So Spaceman Came Travelling had... there was Ken Freeman, who composed the music for Casualty, did the strings, the string symphonizer on it. And it was David Henschel, who produced Genesis and played keyboards, well, ARP synthesizer on Rocket Man for Elton John and did Goodbye Eldrick Road album and stuff like that.
Really?
Barry D'Souza was on drums, and Tony Reeves, who was in a band who I love called Greenslade, was on bass. And it's like, and now I get to find out about this. And I only found out about it 2 years ago. I've been in the band for 14 years, and it's never been a discussion. So it's strange to say all these different things with like Chris and, you know, and John, and just weird links. I mean, even down to John turning around, you know, and me, you know, and he said, "Why are you doing in Germany?" And I said, "Oh, I'm out with Chris de Burgh." He's going, "Oh, give him my regards, lovely fella." He's going, "Right, okay." And it's really strange when other people are connected. And
everybody knows everyone, don't they? I went to see The Sweet last night.
Right.
By the way, how tight are they? Bloody hell! All singing, and you've got the crazy octave. Scott's got this amazing sort of falsetto, hasn't he? And I'm in a band. I'm in another band with the bass player Lee, and they're all fantastic. And then we went sort of side stage afterwards, after everyone was gone, and everyone came out and chatted, and everyone just knows everybody.
Yeah,
you know, we were talking before the light came on, didn't we? With about Bob and Keith Atack and Chris and all those people, and you know them all from old as well.
Yeah, you know, and it's, and you know, I'm with yourself, you know, I'm meeting yourself, and obviously our link is the fact that you know we met up, and if I don't, we had a love for Jon Lord and everything that he did, and then the love of the Hammond organ, and to be honest with you, it was like, you know, it's a bizarre thing. I was in a band called Amsterdam in the late 90s and early 2000s, and we were carting a C3 around in a 145, and I loved it. And you know, sort of, you know, it was got, you know, like if we would do the Monarch in Camden, and there'd be, you know, 6 of us on the flight case taking it up the stairs, and it was just a great sound. And it's very difficult, I think, when you're carrying gear around like that, because you know yourself with your collection, it's very difficult to take the original beast out on the road because it weighs so much.
Yeah, I've only done it once. I did a theatre gig and took that out at the theatre, and whatever 30 stone of it, but I haven't got the pedal board, and I use the XK5 now with that little that one there, the Leslie 3300, and it's still a pain in the neck, but it's much better.
Yeah, I mean,
you have to come and have a look one day.
No, I was going to say that with the Hammond, it's like being a Keith Emerson fan and a John fan, you know, and a Rick Wakeman fan, and Pete Bardens from Camel, loved Pete's sound. You know, Eddie Jobson, incredible sound. You know, I love the UK album. You know, with my favourite guitarist ever, which is, sorry guys, any of my mates who are guitarists, with Alan Holdsworth, who's like, you know, strategically
amazing player
out there compared to everybody else, and you know, I love Larry Carlton and I love Scott Henderson, but Alan was like a different league as well, and
definitely
but the Hammond thing is just incredible. I mean, it's a great instrument, and you know, when you delve into all the stuff going back over the years of all the music that I've listened to a lot of the time, it's generally prog rock and, you know, what would have been deemed as classical rock, which is, you know, Emerson, Lake and Palmer. And
Yeah.
it was because I was a kid discovering that, because my uncle was into ELP and my cousin was big into ELP. And then through finding ELP, I discovered The Nice, which was Keith's band prior to ELP.
Yeah.
And loved the stories about how the guy basically, you know, went from playing with his L100 Hammond and doing gigs to trying to distract from a fight in the audience, allegedly, where that's why he kind of threw the Hammond around the stage in order to get the attention back to the stage, which is just great.
Wow.
But then
I didn't know that.
Yeah, but then the mad one is that he had some daggers basically for his Hammond to hold some of the notes down. But his roadie at the time,
yeah, that's right,
was Lemmy, and it was Lemmy that handed.
I didn't know that.
Yeah, so Lemmy handed him. He said, "You don't want to bother with those kind of namby-pamby daggers. You want one of these. It's like a German dagger, basically. You know, sort of from World War II. So that's what he was using. I never got to see ELP in a heyday. Too young for it. I got to see it in 92. And yeah, I was in awe. It's just incredible. Excuse me.
Yeah. I used to use beer mats. I used to get a beer mat and cut it in half.
Yeah.
And then do it there, and that'd be my way of doing it.
Yeah, Dave Stewart, not David Stewart from the Eurythmics, but Dave Stewart from the Hatfield in the North and the Bill Bruford band, and his own career as well. Dave used like fishing weights, plumb, basically, and just put.
Oh yeah,
which is incredible.
Oh, that's cool. I used to enjoy the theatre of it, really, because there'd be a song which had a long drone.
Yeah.
So I'd just put it on and kind of go very still, and then when it kicked in to the second verse where it was all moving, I could throw the beer mat out, you know, and try and be a little bit dramatic, which is the best I could do.
Well, the thing is that the idea of having a dagger, though, Nick. I mean, the idea of pulling the dagger out and throwing it, it's like it would be a case of where would it go. But
yeah, that's a bit too much, isn't it? What organs have you owned then throughout your career?
I had an M101, which was interesting. It had a modified output. I couldn't afford a Leslie, so it used to go straight into an amp, but it had two controls. It had a volume control, and it had an overdrive control, which basically would just, at the time I didn't know, but overdrive in the preamp, and basically would crank it up, so I could effectively do Jon Lord's kind of sound, kind of stuff, you know. But the weird thing is that when I was a kid, just before my dad died when I was 14. He bought a Gen Commander organ, and I was always fascinated by the Jon Lord sound. And he was just going, "How does he get that sound? Because this organ certainly doesn't sound like Jon Lord. It's nothing like ELP. I mean, it had all the the flutes and clarinet presets on it, and it just I couldn't say to my mum and dad, "It sounds dreadful." I was caught lifting the corner, bringing it down onto his corner to get the reverb springs going, and I was banished to my bedroom for that.
Yes.
But I took an output one and put it into a dance set. A friend of mine brought, when we had a little band together, he didn't have an amplifier, but his dad had basically modified a dance set record player so he could play his guitar through it. With a jack plug, so I plugged the organ into that, and it was it overdrove it to the nth degree. So it became. I thought, oh, that sounds like Jon Lord. It probably sounded nothing like Jon Lord, but it
does though.
Like wow. But
I bought a Bontempi organ off my granddad in 1983, and my brother was a guitar player already, and he had a couple of overdrive pedals and a wah pedal, and every time he went out the house, I'd nick all of his pedals and put this output through. And I mean, obviously, it just sounded horrible, but to me, it sounded the closest I'd ever heard at the time to in rock. You know, just to
yeah.
And like you were saying about the Jon Lord and his rhythm playing, I think you absolutely hit the nail on the head there, because the rhythms he does are unique. They're quite incredible how he pulls that off, and I try all the time to get it, but just getting those 16s but swinging them.
Yeah. And I mean, the whole the intro to Space Trucking on Made in Japan. It's just brilliant. Just great. And I did a tour this year with Deeper Purple, and the first time I'd ever met the guys, and he was just like, never having played. I've done Smoke in the Water with bands before. Obviously did Burn at the Royal Albert Hall for the celebration of John, and You Keep on Moving, and it was at the end I think we did Hush. So I was presented with all these tracks, and the guys are saying, "Oh, these are what we're going to be doing." Just going, I look through and just going, Smoke in the Water. I'd be okay with that. Burn, I don't remember Burn. I'm just going, oh, Perfect Strangers, never heard that before. Oh, I've never actually played Speed King in my life. Child in Time, I kind of done it with John, but also he was taking the Hammond part, so it was quite strange to do that. Doing Highway Star, had the Chris de Burgh band always, every sound check would have a dabble at playing Highway Star or stuff like that.
Brilliant.
But there were a whole bunch of tunes that I didn't even know. So it was a great learning curve, and it was a great revisit back to John's music and early John. And
I think it's lovely. It's lovely to get inside of it sometimes, isn't it? And when you're working stuff out, and John will have improvised it, and you're not, and you'll see how his fingers it just fell there, and then you kind of feel a connection. And here ends part one of my chat with Nigel. Quite an interesting guy, isn't he? Let me know what you think. Give me your opinions on stuff. I love all of that. Like and subscribe, and we'll come back soon for part two.